Yeah, there we go. Okay.
The only thing is that we're so behind the times that we don't even realize that we're doing stuff like that.
Okay. So let me do some introductions. I'm Harvey Ferdman. I'm the president of the Maryland Heights Township Democratic Club, and we have a number of folks on tonight, elected officials and people running for office. So what I'd like to do is, if the elected officials will introduce yourselves first, we can start with Scott. You are a current office holder, right?
I actually am not. I left office last year.
I'm so used to you being in office. My apologies.
Much respect to those who are.
Okay, we'll come back around to the candidate introductions on that. I know we have Dave and Dale Steinberg, who are our committee people for Maryland Heights Township. Are there any other elected folks on here? Oh, Florence is on now. I'd like to introduce Florence Pullen. She's the president of the Creve Coeur Township Democratic Club.
Where's Florence?
Welcome, Florence. We meet jointly for these events, these Zoom events.
What about LaDonna?
Are there any? Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. LaDonna Applebaum is. Well, LaDonna, introduce yourself.
You're me. Okay.
Hi. It's so funny because when Tom served on the Parkway School Board, everyone always would forget to introduce him at different events. So it just goes to show. I'm LaDonna Applebaum, and I represent the 71st District, and I've been coming to the Maryland Heights Township Democratic Club meetings, I think since like 2009, 2010.
Probably.
And I really am glad to be a part of this organization, this club and township. I am running for re-election for my third term. And as of right now, I do not have an opponent. I've been hitting the refresh button every single day to see what's going to happen, but we'll know by 5 o'clock next Tuesday. And I would like just to extend, if I may, an invite. I'm having a basically like a spring kickoff and what happened with filing on Thursday, March 31st at the Coast Sports Bar and Grill. I don't know if you guys can see that. Have a display, and it'll be at 6 p.m. to 8. And I would love to have the Parkway School Board candidate come and get to meet people in that community, because that's in Parkway District. So I'm extending the invitation out now, and I'll put more details in the chat. But I'm proud to serve. I'm the ranking member on the House and Mental Health. Geez, I can't even say it. Maybe I shouldn't be. But I'm happy to be on that committee. We're hearing a lot of things that's important to me. And today I got an amendment that passed on a bill in committee for suicide prevention. So,
LaDonna, how is redistricting affected your district?
It's going to affect me a lot. I will no longer have Maryland Heights, and I will no longer have Overland, and I will no longer have all of that. I will have unincorporated and Creve Coeur.
Huh.
I've heard like an 87 to a 57. So,
Excellent.
I work hard no matter if I have an opponent or not, whether I'm going to be working for myself or Tracy or Paula or some new people that we want to get elected in areas where we haven't had a representative before. So I'm all
excellent. Thank you. Other elected officials, if you would identify yourselves, since I'm not doing such a great job of that tonight. Is there anyone else who's an elected official who's on the line? Okay, we'll move on to candidates. I know Scott Sifton is here. Scott, like to introduce yourself, tell us what you're running for, and a little bit about, what your priorities are?
Sure. Democratic candidate for United States Senate, Scott Sifton. Harvey, do you want me to launch into my spiel now, or should I give it
Yeah.
a rest and wait a minute?
No, go ahead and launch into it now.
How long should I go? I don't want to filibuster.
If you can keep it to three to 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and then some
Got it.
room for questions, maybe.
Got it. Fair enough. Well, I'll try to be brief. I'll tell you right now, it's been a tough day. A lot of us are grieving the loss of Cora Faith Walker. She's a personal friend. We had her funeral Friday, which was tough. And to see Tim Fitch out there trying to score political points about this right now is just sickening to me and heartbreaking and makes me very angry. And that was before what we saw from Dr. Sheena Greitens today, a 41-page affidavit regarding detailed allegations of abuse by former Governor Eric Greitens against her and her son. If you haven't read the Washington Post write-up, do it. But don't do it on a full stomach. It reminded me of the House impeachment report that was done in Jefferson City a few years back. It's just appalling. Eric Greitens has no business being anywhere near public office. I fought him as hard as I could when I was in the Senate and he was governor. I called for his resignation. I signed the impeachment inquiry. And pretty much I think everybody in the race has called on him to drop out in the wake of the latest allegations. But it's just disgusting. And with that, I just a little bit about myself. I've served in the Missouri Senate the last 8 years out of South St. Louis County, won some tough races, beat an incumbent Republican to flip a seat. 4 years later, I won again in the Trump. So I'm one of the few Democrats that's been able to consistently win against well-funded Republicans. And in a poll released last Wednesday, not only was I dead even with Eric Greitens, 45 to 45.2, he is the Republican frontrunner, I was also doing better against Greitens than any other Democrat in the field, and I think that's important. My agenda includes a lot of things policy-wise, but first and foremost, I just want to make sure Missouri Democrats exit the cycle feeling like we're back in the game in Missouri. 2018 went better than a lot of people realized. Obviously, we lost Senator McCaskill, and that was heartbreaking and bad. Nicole Galloway won that day. And between the two statewide campaigns, the Democrats actually received 49.997% of the vote that year. 706 ballots was the difference in the state. But you read the paper and you'd think that there are no Democrats in Missouri anymore. We had almost half of the vote two short elections ago. And we can beat Eric Greitens. We can beat Eric Schmidt. We can beat Vicky Hartzer. We can beat these Republicans. Policy-wise, there's a lot that's important to me. And in the Missouri Senate, I fought hard against, among other things, domestic violence. We got domestic violence fatality review panels into law. I was the one that did that. I introduced it my last year in the Senate. It got passed the year after I left, but expanding domestic orders of protection to pets, which sounds a little silly, but in reality, a lot of abusers threaten animals to try to control their human victims. And so it was an important thing to be able to do. On economics, I've been an advocate for a stronger minimum wage. I fought hard against right to work. On social policy, I have been 100% pro-choice in my time in the Missouri Senate. I've spent more time filibustering bad Republican abortion legislation the last decade than pretty much anybody this side of Senator Jill Shoup, who represents many of you in the Missouri Senate now. But I've fought hard on that issue. And I've also fought against racial inequality. I was able on the last day of session of 2016 to get the Ferguson Commission's recommendation on the officer use of force standard into law. We got that done. I fought Eric Greitens' employment discrimination bill as hard as I could. I was one of the last two senators standing against it when Republicans exercised the nuclear option. Inflation in the economy is going to be a big issue. We got to work hard to maintain or get to and maintain full employment. That's going to take changes in how we do things in our K-12 institutions, our 2- and 4-year colleges and universities, and in our technical and trade schools. So I don't want to go over long here. I really could give you a 20-minute rendition of this talk, but I don't want to use more time than what you have budgeted, and I'd frankly like to get to your questions. Last thing I'll say is, of course, I'm here tonight to ask for your vote on August 2nd Our website is scottsifton.com. We've won a lot of tough races against well-funded Republicans, and I look forward to winning one more in November with your help.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions? Just go ahead and either jump in or raise your hand. I'll kick off a question. If elected, are there any particular caucuses that you would be a member of?
Haven't gotten that far yet, other than to say the Democratic caucus in the United States Senate. And to be honest with you, I'm actually not familiar with the various caucuses that run in the Senate in Washington. In Missouri, you have a whole lot more caucuses in the state House than you do in the state Senate. Really, you only have the Democrat, Republican, and conservative caucuses in the state Senate. And I don't know that the U.S. Senate has those structured. It's something I'll certainly find out about. But frankly, my focus is going to be one on supporting the Biden administration, working to continue to try to get Build Back Better through, working to codify Roe versus Wade, working to get some clean energy legislation across the finish line, but also looking out for Missouri's interests. I mean, we have a lot of intersections with federal government in our state, and we need a U.S. senator who's going to be focused on that. In fact, I am more worried about getting things done for Missouri than I am about, particular committee assignments or caucus affiliations. It's all important, but I think at the end of the day, taking care of business for Missouri is what matters most.
Excellent. Are there any other questions?
I'll ask one. I loved what you said about wanting to exit this cycle, feeling like the Democratic Party of Missouri is in a better place than maybe we think we are. Can you say more about what you're doing and what you hope to do in the next 8 months or so?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that I'm the only candidate in this race on either side of the aisle who has been to all 114 Missouri counties in the last 12 calendar months. We have hit them all, and we are going to keep hitting them. And that's not just important for rural Missouri. That's important for suburban, exurban, and urban Missouri as well. We're going to be showing up places. We have been and will continue to. We've done the most of it of any campaign, and we're going to keep doing it. I think it's important for people across the state to hear from the Democratic U.S. Senate candidate, and I think it's important for the Democratic U.S. Senate candidate to hear from them. I learned things from doing this, and it's tremendously helpful. Like, for instance, Harvey asked about caucuses within the Senate other than D versus R, not something I focused on. That's just a for instance of what I get out of some of these things. Look, getting the message across, and Eric Schmidt very kindly gave us a list of 45 school districts to come visit when he sued them over their mask policy. And we've been having that conversation across the state. And I'm telling you, particularly some of the suburban districts around Kansas City, where I grew up, a lot of those are trending our way. North Kansas City schools, Park Hill, Liberty, Lee Summit. Those are areas that are full with the kinds of former Republicans that have been gravitating toward Democrats in recent cycles. We have some parts of St. Louis that are that way too. Frankly, I helped, color South County blue, but we have to keep bringing those trending areas into the Democratic fold. And I think, frankly, Eric Greitens and Eric Schmidt are helping us in that regard with how they're approaching things. Other questions?
Well, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Charlie.
Yes, Scott, could you speak to the Voting Rights Act in the Senate level?
Sure. Unfortunately, right now, it's pretty much bottled up. There was a test vote on a procedural change that would have allowed voting rights to come to a vote by a simple majority without a 60-member cloture. And that vote failed because not all 50 Democrats were on board. That's unacceptable to me. And I'll tell you, not only have I fought bad Republican voter rights legislation in Missouri, I actually have helped to pass expansions of voting rights legislation. For instance, in 2020, we were all able to vote by mail for the first time in Missouri. It was a one-time COVID-driven policy change, but I was one of the 4 Democrats that negotiated that bill. And to be sure, it wasn't a perfect bill. It had flaws, the notarization requirement needed to go. The Republicans wouldn't take it out. But the point is, I've been fighting that fight in Missouri, and I will support the For the People Act. I will support the John Lewis Act. Pretty much whatever rendition we can get to a vote in the U.S. Senate, I'm going to support, as long as it has the support of the Democratic majority and President Biden. It's important. It's fundamental. And the sad reality is that states like Florida and Georgia and Texas right now are taking away ballot access that we've never even had in Missouri. Some of the opportunities to vote that those states have been eliminating, we don't even have. So Missouri's definitely one of the less voter-friendly states in that regard. Any other questions?
We have a question on chat. What will you do regarding the voting legislation at the state level that keep creating limitations on people of color and those less privileged?
Well,
I think he just answered that.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I
think
think you
having
answered
left
that.
the
I'm
Senate,
sorry.
I don't have a direct role at the state level, but having served in the Senate,
Yeah.
I've been fighting that fight for a long time.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Scott, and thanks for your years of service, and best of luck.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Really appreciate the opportunity.
And I noticed we have more people who have logged in, so just to be sure, if there's any elected officials who have not introduced themselves, now would be a good time. And recognizing and hearing no one, are there any candidates, school board or anything else that are on who would like to say a few words? Okay, if not, there's a couple of announcements before we get into our program for the evening. Kathy Chipperfield, would you like to announce the upcoming events that you guys are doing? Need to unmute.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I am representing Conversations for Political Change. We are a huddle of Indivisible St. Louis. And on Wednesday, we are having Lucas Kuntz at 10 o'clock speak to our group. It is the second time he has been with our group. The first time was when he just announced, a year or so ago. And so we're happy to have him back. Since he has his website pretty much, answers all the obvious questions, we expect during this meeting to have more of a casual conversation and to have him let us know how he plans to win in a red state, especially if Greitens is not the opponent. And that is one of the main questions I think that we're going to be asking him. So if you are interested in that meeting, all you have to do is send your email to cfpc at politics.com. And I'm going to put it in the chat for you. And then when we get your email, we'll send you the Zoom link, and that will be at 10 o'clock the day after tomorrow. Okay. Is that clear?
Yeah, and my understanding is you guys are doing a series of these with
Yes.
each candidate.
Yes.
Excellent.
Well, Indivisible has been having meetings on Sundays, and they had Scott yesterday, as a matter of fact, and they're having all of the candidates that are running for the Democratic seat against Blunt. And Conversations for Political Change, we're first our own little grassroots group before we connected up with Indivisible. So we've had all of the candidates that have been running for against Blunt as a Democrat, and we're a grassroots organization. We do quite a bit of we're in the field, we do rallies, we write postcards. We're working for state representatives right now. What we've tried to do with Indivisible is have them deal with now deal with more of the federal things. This is our last federal person. We're going to start dealing with more of the state representatives, like Jessica Piper up in Northwest Missouri, people like that. So we're pretty much we're an activist group. We're a bunch of people. We have 90 people in our group, and we meet every Wednesday with probably like 15 or 20 people. So that's kind of what the deal is.
Have you had Spencer Toder?
Yes, we've had Spencer Toder. We really like Spencer. He's a great mind. And if he doesn't, make it this time, I hope that he will have a future, in politics in Missouri. He's a great, brilliant mind, I think.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you.
Very impressed.
I actually have a couple of announcements, but does anyone else have any announcements? Oops. Am I muted? No. Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements before I talk about mine? Okay. Just two interesting announcements. One is many of you know that I've been involved with the Westlake landfill, the Bridgeton landfill, with the burning nuclear waste and all that, and it's been in the news lately. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm, amongst other things, chair of the community advisory group that meets with EPA and all that. EPA recently has, well, the good news is, at our urging, EPA has been doing more testing, and they have been finding more radioactive waste. The extent of which they have not published yet, but they have gone on the record that it's because they're finding more, it's going to delay the removal process. Some people view that as not so good news because they're not starting to remove yet. There are others like me who view it as good news because they're being very thorough. And we had fought for years to get them to do the right level of testing, and this is a step in the direction, although I'd still like to see them do even more. But at least now they're doing more than they originally had planned. So you'll see that bouncing around the news, and that's kind of the update there. So they have not made a statement on when the actual removal will begin because they can't finish the engineering of how to do a safe removal until they know where all this stuff is.
Have they given you any public information about it?
I'm sorry?
Have they given you any public information about what they found and where they're going from here? Are they still in the exploring?
They have not. With that's their statement is that they are in the they do rounds of testing. So they do this process where they are trying to find the margins. So they call it a step out. So they step out of the known lines a certain amount and hopefully don't find anything. And if they do, then they have to do another round of step outs. So this round of step outs is not completed, but they have found additional materials in this step out. But we're trying to get them to release the data that they do have, and their stance right now is they want to totally complete the step out and then publish it all at once. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're trying to get them to release what they do have, and they're saying they want to have the complete step out and do it as a single report.
How long will that take, just to complete the step out?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, and because they have found more material, that means there will be most likely another step out. So that's why they're now going from a determined date for when they were going to start removal to, gee, we don't know, because they don't know how many rounds of step outs they're going to have to do. Again, it's good news, bad news, but the good news is they're being thorough. or at least more thorough than they have in the past.
Have you calmed Don Chapman down yet?
No. Working on that today.
Good.
Yeah, so that's where we are. She was on St. Louis on the Air today if you're interested in catching that. Pretty good review of what's going on. The second thing is, while we're waiting for Kelly to join us, Kelly had another meeting. She's coming in as soon as she can. She said 7:30-ish. There was a very controversial thing that happened right on the border between between Maryland Heights and Chesterfield that involved my neighborhood and many others. I do live in Chesterfield, although it is part of Maryland Heights Township. And it's a good example of community organizing, getting things done. There's a company that wanted to put a automobile distribution site right next to the water plant, if you guys are familiar with the Hog Hollow water processing plant. And the way that works is there's people who live in Chesterfield whose property lines literally go up to the city line, which is right at the railroad tracks that separate Maryland Heights from Chesterfield. And in order to accommodate a 3,000 car storage lot for all the vehicles being produced at Wentzville, they were going to truck them in, 5 trucks an hour worth of vehicles coming into that area and then being loaded onto trains. They were going to have to build a 6-track switching station, which would have created an amazing amount of noise and all that stuff. And the citizens around here got together and funded their own sound study and approached the zoning commission in Maryland Heights. The Maryland Heights Zoning Commission agreed that it was going to be too noisy and said no to the developer. The developer appealed to Maryland Heights City Council, who said yes to the project, much to our chagrin. We even got Chesterfield to pass not an ordinance, I forget what you call it. It's not a law, but a recommendation. Dave, I can't hear what you're saying. I forgot the right term. A resolution. Thank you. We got them to pass a resolution asking Maryland Heights not to approve putting this thing in because of the disruption it would do, not just to our neighborhoods, but other neighborhoods along the valley that are also in Maryland Heights. And eventually, after contacting General Motors, because this was being put into by a contractor for General Motors, we got the project pulled. So they're no longer going to do it. But this is a project that was under development for 2 years. There were going to be 3,000 cars to begin with and expanding to 6,000 over time. So community organizing works, getting businesses involved, is really key. Once we had the local businesses alerted, they didn't want the bad rap for General Motors doing something. Turns out General Motors didn't even know it was going to be this disruptive to the neighborhood. And once they found out, they pulled the project. So a lot of good background work was done so that when it hit the right people in General Motors, we had all the right information for them to be able to evaluate it and see what a mistake it would be to have that go in. Okay, unless there's any questions on that or any other, are there any questions? Okay. Are there any announcements before we have Kelly take the floor? Kelly has arrived. Okay, Kelly, the floor is yours, and thank you very much for being here and for your service to the community.
Thank you so much, Harvey. Hey, everybody. It's so great to see you all. Can you give me co-hosting ability so I can share my screen?
As soon as I can figure out how to do that now, unless you want to get to it first. Kelly.
And while they're doing that, I'm going to send
I got
everybody
it.
a link to the ballot.
There you are.
All right, you
Should
got
be
it?
okay now.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm dropping a link to the ballot into the chat box. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see black and white, super boring slide? All right. All right. So we've got 4 propositions on the ballot in St. Louis County in the April election. The first one is, well, I just want to start out by saying, I think we should be very careful about the choices we make when it comes to amending the charter. I think that if we can accomplish something by ordinance, we should go that route because things change and it's easier to change and update. So I am in most situations going to very hesitantly vote for a charter amendment. So I do want to preface this whole conversation with my bias there. So Prop A, what came about because after Steve Stenger went to prison, Nicole Galloway's office as the auditor, state auditor, came in and did an audit of St. Louis County government. One of the things that was in her report that could be tightened up for purposes of increased transparency was that the county executive's entire staff showed up on a line item in the county executive's budget. Right now, the photographer, I'm making this up, but just to give you an example, right now, the county executives, like photographer is on the justice services, salary and benefits. Another employee is in the transportation and public works department, and they're just kind of all over the place. So this Prop A would require that the entirety of the county executive staff be in his, hopefully someday her, line item budget. So I did vote yes to put this on the ballot this spring, and I do plan to vote yes for this. There are a number of people that have plenty of pushback. I've even talked to some of my colleagues that haven't decided how they're going to vote. But one of the things that they mention is that this is chasing a problem that doesn't exist. So that's kind of what this one is about. Does anybody have any questions or comments or want to talk through this one at all? Okay, then I will move on to Prop B. So this proposition is a change to the charter over one person. So the county executive, current county executive, moonlights as an anesthesiologist. You can talk to the county executive and ask why he does this, but in my view, it's to keep his skills sharp, and partly to keep his license current, and partly because it's a job, it's a career he loves. Like nobody's going to be the county executive forever, right? So at some point, he is going to have to go back and do his job. And I also think that I think about myself, and please do not interpret this as me saying I want to be the county executive, because I am not saying that at all. But I think about myself, and would I really never want to take any coaching clients on the side or take a really fun project in my where I've been trained? And I just think that it's hard enough to find quality people to want to be in public service, that limiting their ability to have something else going on is a detriment to our community. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Or yeah, Harvey.
I'm not a medical professional. Does he need to have a certain amount of practice hours in order to maintain his license as a doctor?
That's a question for him. I'm not 100% sure about. I would assume so.
Well, I would kind of hope so.
If I may interject, I believe that he does. All the licensures in the state of Missouri require additional education each year.
And he has also said that, I heard him say it, or I read that he had said it, that he had to have a certain amount of hours in order to keep his license.
Can I ask does this proposition affect any other county position? Is it just the county executive?
It's just, yeah.
Okay.
So I will.
Isn't that like?
I do want to clarify.
Legal or something?
Sorry, what, Harvey?
Isn't that unconstitutional to have a law that's targeted at one individual?
We make laws like that all the time. That's my snarky response to that. But I, again, this is like amending the charter for one person. It's just.
I think that the county executive is the only person that currently has this restriction of not holding any outside employment.
Well,
The council members, nobody else has that restriction on them. So that this is making it firmer, but it only affects one person because he's the only one who has that restriction now.
Well, in the charter, there are technically 2 other positions that have even stricter rules. So what they are trying to do here with this is to tighten this up the same way that the county councilor cannot have additional employment, which makes perfect sense because lawyers create conflicts pretty easily by working on other types of legal cases. The county councilor cannot have other work. The chief of police cannot have other work. Those are the only 2 positions in all of St. Louis County that the charter explicitly says can hold no other position. And so this would sort of mirror that. But again, I've given you all the reasons I'm against it. So if anybody else has any thoughts or questions about it or wants to jump in, please. Okay. Well, we can move on to Prop C. Prop C is our use tax.
I'm sorry, Nancy had raised her hand.
Oh, sorry.
Nancy,
I just wanted to say, I think that particularly in this particular case, as a medical person, this is his life. And just as Kelly said, this is his lifetime career. Who says he's going to be in politics forever? And he does require, the experience to keep his skills honed, but at the same time, he also is required to do hours of education, certain numbers of CEUs or whatever they call them for doctors. So I would totally agree on no Prop.
Does anyone have a differing opinion that you want to express?
Kelly, I was just wondering, what's the precedent? I mean, how many other county executives have had other jobs? Do we know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I had a question. Would there be a certain amount of hours, though, that they would be confined to for working outside of being the counselor?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that other than to say that I think as long as the county executive is responsive to emergencies and does the normal expected hours during the week, it would be like saying he can't go to the farm for the weekend or you're dictating what he does in his evenings. Because as far as I know, he only did this in evenings and I don't even know how often, but not very many evenings and weekend shifts. I don't know if that's being responsive. But also I have a very liberal view of checking in and out of work, especially now that the boundaries have, changed for some of us.
Okay. Thank you.
But I also did ask the county executive once, what happens if you're in the middle of a surgery, an emergency, and you need to deal with the county emergency? And he did say that he always has a plan B. There's backup to get him out of the operating room if he needs to go. Any other that was Prop B questions or comments or thoughts? Okay. So Prop C, as I mentioned, is the Wayfair legislation that is going to allow St. Louis County to collect sales tax on online purchases from out of state. All 7 council members voted to put this on the ballot. We are looking for any way that we can to collect much needed revenue. And the way things exist, it's almost like it's a detriment to small local businesses who are having to pay taxes while we order from out of state and there's no tax collected or paid on that. So the state changed the law earlier, so opening it up so that we can do the same. I will say that if you live in a municipality, it is very likely that your municipality will also have a use tax on the ballot. Please vote yes for both of them and not one or the other, because they're coming through different streams. Any questions or comments about that one?
Well, I just have a comment. I know Chesterfield, where I live, does have one on the ballot, and there's been a lot of online discussions, and my point of view is when, and maybe Kelly, you can relate this to the county, when Amazon or FedEx or UPS delivers to my house, they're using Chesterfield roads. I guess they're using county roads as well, and maybe some state roads too. And when it snows, Chesterfield's plowing those roads so that they can deliver to my house. So it seems only fair that we should be supporting, keeping the roads maintained and all that stuff so that we can make these online purchases.
Yeah, I like that.
That's my comment.
Following along with that, is it that this is a use tax? Is that paid by the corporation, the company, or is that held by the company but originally paid for by the consumer or the purchaser?
It's B. So you pay the tax and then they pass it on to the county or the municipality.
Yeah, it makes that online purchase look like a local merchant purchase.
Exactly.
It also levels the playing field for local merchants, so that there's no longer a tax advantage to buy online.
Yep. Yep.
Seems fair.
All right. So are we ready to talk about Prop D? I feel like this is the one that is kind of the most interesting and bizarre. So I'm going to drop Sierra Club, did a little write-up on this, and they included the whole piece of legislation. So I'm going to drop that in the chat too, so everybody can take a look at that. I feel like this is an audience that's going to be friendly to the Sierra Club's point of view. A few years ago, there was a charter that requires that anytime St. Louis County leases park space or does any major changes to park space, the voters have to approve it. This was because the last county executive made some deals with parks in exchange for, campaign contributions. So this one is for a nature school is planning to lease the old dog museum building for 40 years. They're going to be putting in some pretty significant capital investments, I think about $1 million worth. It's a private school, but it is going to be on Queenie Park land. And they're going to have this, it's a private school that basically raises granola kids that milk cows and, know how to grow gardens and stuff. It actually sounds pretty cool. I learned a lot about that in preparation for this. So it's up to you if we're going to lease the dog museum space to Rain Tree Foundation for its school. Any questions or comments about this?
Is the lease enough money to cover any expenses that the county would have?
I'm sure it is. I didn't get into the huge weeds of it, but a private school, I'm sure. Oh, hands are up too. I know I didn't answer your question, Harvey, but are you satisfied? I know an answer.
Dennis, I think I saw your hand first, Dennis Lavallee.
I guess just a comment or an observation. Is this kind of the camel's nose under the tent for charter schools that are on county property? And then also just to the extent we are using county property for some of these kinds of things, I guess it
Tell them what you're doing.
Something about it, my gut reaction just doesn't feel right. But one of the issues would certainly be the charter school question as to whether this is a nose under the tent for charter schools that might be using county property.
Gosh, I hope not. That would certainly not be my intent. But I mean, they're taking a building that's just sitting there, not being used, that is costing us money, as opposed to bringing in revenue, and they're, creating environmental, sustainable little troopers.
Well, having grown up on a farm, I love all that. I'm a farmer by heart. So I'm just looking at the values we have and the issues it may raise down the line and the precedent that it may set. The concept certainly sounds great. Is that the right place? And I appreciate the fact it would be nice to raise money from it, but it may be the wrong place.
It is a park after all.
Yeah.
Kelly, can I jump in?
I think your hand's been up. I think you're up next. Hey, Michael.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Michael Meredith. I'm on the County Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So I've been involved in this quite extensively. First of all, in answer to the previous question, I don't think it's the camel's nose in the tent. This isn't a charter school. It's an independent private school. I don't even think it's for profit. I think it runs on a nonprofit foundation. But chief amongst all this is the fact that within the first, I'm going to get my timings wrong, within the first couple of years, Raintree is committed to funding $1 million worth of capital improvements to the site. And I'm going to say in the 5 to 10 year period, they're committed to another $4 million. So it's really a nice win-win for the county parks, because number one, we immediately remove the expenses that we have to incur in maintaining the site. And Jarville House is currently in need of some repair and improvements, but then it's also going to be improving it excessively. Also, if they have any, if they continue what was done when it was the dog museum and have private events like wedding receptions and so forth, the county gets a cut of that revenue. So,
cool.
Mike, how can they afford to spend millions of dollars on the property? They're certainly not going to get it back in tuition.
They've got a pretty nice building that they're going to be they'll be selling once they move into Jarville House. So that's, I suspect that's what's going to fund it.
I see some more hands up. Sherry and Nancy both have hands up too.
Yeah, Sherry Rose, I think you were up next.
Yeah, I just had the same concern as to, I mean, I looked up the Raintree Foundation. It sounds great, like a wonderful school and a great experience for students, but I just worry that it does set some kind of precedence. And even though this is not a charter school, it seems to me a charter school could maybe argue that they should have the same rights. I don't know.
I guess my concern is if someone wants to build a new building, I mean, it's kind of an interesting case because I'm assuming this is a building that's not being used. But it's kind of a hypothetical. What if someone came along and said they wanted to build a whole brand new building? That changed the dynamics. I guess Michael Meredith, would you want to address that if someone wanted to build, break ground and build a whole new building out there?
When you say someone, are you talking about Raintree School or you're another party?
Another similarly situated group as Raintree, another, maybe for older kids.
Well, I know
and they want to actually break ground.
Well, I know you're talking to Michael, but if it's in a St. Louis County park, it's going to have to go back to the voters. Like we can't do anything on St. Louis County park lands anymore like this without voter approval.
She's absolutely right. And right now, it's, tuition for Raintree School, I think is like $19,000 a year. So it's not catering to the same, to what I'd call your charter school population.
Nancy, you had a question? Nancy Hirsch? You're muted, Nancy.
I think Kelly just answered it without realizing it. That this doesn't change that other law that exists with the county leasing property. It still requires the full vote.
Yep, it does.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I'm wondering why it matters that this school is catering to, I don't know if we can call it a private school or a more wealthy student base versus a charter school hoping for a free education to a varying level of public versus fully private. There's a classism in that is a little challenging for me. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, I know I'm not really asking a question. I'm just noticing it and saying that feels, I think challenging is the best word I can use tonight.
Got a question?
I see Betsy's hand up.
Yeah. Can I speak now?
Is that Betsy?
Yeah, Betsy.
Jump in.
Go ahead.
How I haven't seen, what are the plans for I know it's the building, what are the plans for the outdoor spaces? Is there a plan we can look at that shows how they're using the space that's adjacent to the building? The other thing is, I know a lot of people park at that parking lot in order to hike from that area as well. So just a couple of questions.
Yeah, so if you click on the Sierra Club link that I dropped in the chat box, it takes you to the full piece of the legislation that created the ballot amendment. So you can there's a lot of information in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Karen. I'm sorry, I couldn't see my raised hand. If nobody's in front of me, I just have a comment or two. So Michael, I was at the sort of a coalition meeting about it with Sierra Club, and so they, I guess the good thing about it that I came away with is the fact that it will improve the building, and the public will be able to use it in off hours for meetings, for, as Michael commented about, also for, events. Okay, you have to go through the regular process to do that. And yeah, for events, I think that would be in the evening. So yes, people would probably use the parking that's there where everybody parks to go hiking. However, that was answered at that coalition meeting, and they said that they, only needed the amount of spaces for parking that are there at the already there that were used, I guess, for the museum, that it wouldn't overflow for the school into that nice parking area for the hikers. So, that was a plus. But I realized that it's a private school. He also addressed the fact that they have, I don't know what exactly you call it, but they have a certain amount of money that is basically, it's not a grant, but like if somebody would apply who didn't have the money to go there, that they could get a scholarship type of thing to go to the school. So I don't know how often that happens, but, that was something that the question came up. So that's just a little more information. And I have not read the entire, what Kelly mentioned. I have not, read the entire proposal, but I mean, they're going to pay for the, of course, all of the electric and the this and the that. And, I know the county parks is excited about it, and otherwise the building will probably just go down the tubes. I think they've had other people requesting to lease the building, and they rejected them. And I can't remember who they were or what the situation was, but anyway, this sounded like a good proposal from the Raintree group. So I guess that's all I can add to that.
Well, thank you. There's a number of questions. Dave and Dale, Sherry, and then Charlie Dooley.
Okay.
Dave and Dale, you had your hand up first.
Okay, I have a comment. It doesn't seem right somehow to use public space and public land for private use. That's my comment. I don't care how much money it would bring in.
Well, just don't forget that there's, Go Ape, there's the people that rent this is in Creve Coeur Park. There's Go Ape up there, but I mean, it's open to the public. There's the people who rent the kayaks. There's a restaurant at Creve Coeur Park. There's plenty of soccer fields in Creve Coeur Park.
Queenie Park has the equestrian group.
Yeah,
That
Queenie
uses
Park has an
storage space for their
equestrian
equipment.
group.
Those are all for public use.
Thank you.
Well, an equestrian group,
Not the equestrian group stuff.
well,
They
that's,
store their jumps in the buildings of Queenie Park. And it's for the equestrian group only.
yeah.
Sherry, you had a question?
Look at it.
Oh, I just wonder if a private school is on public property, would they have to follow all of the laws, like the anti-discrimination laws and things like that, that some private schools, like some private schools don't have to admit students with disabilities, for instance. I would think if they're on public property, they should follow the same laws that other public entities have to follow.
Interesting question. Does anyone know an answer to that? Okay, Charlie Dooley, you had a question?
Yes. First, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
First of all, the issue is it's a private entity. It's independent. If it's private, that's what it means. It's not open to the public. That's a fact. Then there's a tuition, $18,000 or $19,000, regardless of the set aside. It's not open to the public. The dog museum, I may be opposed to the dog museum, but it was open to the public. Anybody could come. What we're saying now is the private entity, if they can spend that type of money, why can't they find their own property? And then the park system has a responsibility to the citizen to create those types of platforms that the residents would want to come and to get involved with. That's what the county does. That's what the park's supposed to do, provide those type of programs in the near future. But now you're taking public land away from what could be used in the future for public consumption. That is not right. If it's private, and I have utmost respect for the independent and the private sector of our community, but it needs to stay private. If they have those types of resources, why can't they buy their own property and do whatever they want to do with it? Again, if you say that you have a scholarship, that means it's restrictive to those that can afford that $18,000 or $19,000, and also it says we get to pick and choose who we want to come to this school. That is not public consumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I was quite insightful. Thank you. Dennis Lavallee.
Well, just a further observation, I just went and clicked on the links to go to the Sierra Club, and other than seeing a little bit of description, I couldn't find much on Raintree Foundation, so I then just clicked on and maybe I found the wrong Raintree Foundation, but I clicked on the Raintree Foundation and found that it's by the Ministry of Interior. That's not the Department of Interior, it's the Ministry of Interior. I didn't catch what country, but I think it was Germany. And
That's a different.
and it's
that's a
referring to
different entity.
Thailand.
That's not the right one. That's not.
Okay,
that is
okay,
not
because
the school.
I tried searching and that's what I was coming up with.
You have to put Raintree St. Louis.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'll try again. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? This is obviously a lot of broad spectrum of thoughts here. Okay. Kelly, as the presenter, do you have any final words or comments that you'd like to put in on the record?
I don't think so. I mean, I appreciate all the interest, and I love to see so many people engaged in an April election. This is awesome.
Yep, April 5th. It's coming up shortly.
We didn't even talk about school boards.
Well, if you're, and I want to, make a plug for early voting. If anybody's going to be out of town, you can go to the Board of Elections and vote now.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else have any other comments, announcements? I want to thank everyone. This has been really quite good. Kelly, once again, thank you, and thank you for your service. And oh, by the way, that whole controversial thing that I was talking about with the auto distribution point between Maryland Heights and Chesterfield, Kelly was also instrumental in helping to get that project pulled. And thank you again on that, Kelly.
That was my pleasure because it's my neighborhood too.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I guess we'll conclude the meeting up. We have a question from Sydney Jackson. If anyone's interested in working the polls on April 5th, you can reach out to Sydney Jackson. Her contact information is in the chat. And what I'm going to do is give you guys a chance here to save the chat or copy anything that you need. I guess while we're giving you time for that, our next meeting will be the third Monday in April. And if anyone has any suggestions for programming for that meeting or any other, please reach out, let us know. I'm more than happy to accommodate any good ideas. And yes, we will screen them. Okay. And with that, we'll conclude the meeting. Thank you all very much and have a great week.